Senator Graham, thanks for being here. Do you think that what the president said tonight will have any impact on, say, the voters in your state, where I believe, like all over the country, they're skeptical of this plan?
Well, I thought the moral case was very persuasive, quite frankly, and compelling, and that was what I remember most about the speech. When you ask yourself, when this is over, what do I remember? I remember that we're an exceptional nation, that what Assad did violated the basic laws of humanity, and if we don't act, who will? And they expect us to look the other way, and we can't afford to. So here's the takeaway for me. After the leader of the free world made such an impassioned plea for moral outrage and a response, it's impossible for him not to react if diplomacy fails, not to act. So if diplomacy fails, he's painted himself in a corner. The leader of the free world can't say all these things. At the end of the day, do nothing.
Well, one thing I read in your Twitter feed, of which I'm an avid reader, as is America.
You need to get a lot.
Is that you don't think that he made the national security case?
No, I remember.
What is the national security case?
Well, look at it this way. Iran. One line about Iran. Of all the things that I worry about changing the world for the worse, it's not Syria. It's the Iranians getting a nuclear weapon. And how can you mention Syria without talking about the Iranians? The Ayatollahs are sizing us up. And if we get Syria wrong, we'll be under the world, because the Iranians are going to take this as a weak American response in Syria, and they're off the races to their nuclear weapon.
And Senator, part of the reason I think you would agree that the president wanted you all just to hold off on this vote on authorization is because the votes weren't there. Is that fair to say?
Probably.
So do you think the president said anything that will persuade any of your colleagues, or maybe enough of your colleagues, to support any kind of military strike, even if it's just sort of the teeth to back diplomacy?
I think he probably stopped some Democratic bleeding. I think it's probably
enough.
Maybe. I mean, you know, right now, I don't know what the vote totals on the Democratic side, but we could probably muster double digits on our side at best. But this is a process. This is the first step. If it's 50-47, that's progress.
Well, when you said, though, that he's backed himself into a corner,
yeah,
and now he's got to act. So say the UN falls apart, which I think you
I can't believe that's a possibility, but let's just assume, let's assume the Russians are not the beacon and hope of mankind.
Okay, let's stipulate that if you want. Okay, so if you assume that it's going to fall apart as you do,
but
and
I'm
you
willing
say
to try, actually.
Okay, but you say he's backed himself into a corner. So does he even have to go to Congress?
You know, there's probably a reason for 225 times presidents didn't come to Congress. I don't know if I'd come to talk with us. Quite frankly, the president has mismanaged this from day one about what we're trying to do, the goals we're trying to achieve. I think he made an unbelievably compelling case that we need to act here, and compare that to the unbelievably small response we're going to give. So at the end of the day, if I were the president, I would act after this speech if the diplomacy fell apart, and I wouldn't come back to Congress.
Do you think he should?
Because if he doesn't, his credibility as a world leader is completely shot. You can't address the world and talk to your enemies and your friends in the tone he did and do nothing.
But is it a mistake not to lay out a time frame for diplomacy to work?
Oh, don't worry. The Congress will help him there. If 2 weeks from now we're still talking about what the inventory in Syria is like for the chemical weapons, nobody is going to be able to tolerate that.
Really? You don't think he's shown exceptional patience to date?
Well, what I think is the president really is trying to do. Force does matter. I don't think we'd have this conversation without the threat of military force. I really believe the president's right about that. When the Foreign Relations Committee passed a resolution, I think Assad and Russia took this a bit differently.
Let me ask you a question. A senior White House official told me that this was the goal for the speech. He said the purposes of the speech was to acknowledge the public's misgivings, to address them. He went through the list. We did not expect to swing public opinion. The idea was to spell out in detail why the use of chemical weapons in Syria matters, why it's a long-term threat to the U.S., why the international community led by the U.S. should respond, and why the Russian diplomatic initiative never would have happened if it weren't for the threat of U.S. force. Do you think he achieved these things?
I think he's 3 for 4.
3 for 4.
That's pretty good in baseball. Yeah, I think the one thing he forgot to tell us is what happens if this war goes on for a year. Does it matter if the King of Jordan is a victim of the Civil War? I think it matters a lot. Does it matter that Iraq,
you just talk about the war going on for, you're talking about the Civil War, or you're talking about the U.S. involvement?
I'm talking about the consequences of this.
You're talking national security.
Yeah, national security. What happens if Assad is winning a year
the Civil War, okay, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Is it a civil war, or is it something greater? Clearly it's a civil war with catastrophic regional consequences. Losing the King of Jordan is a high likelihood if Assad is winning a year from now. Iraq is falling apart mainly because of Syria, not completely.
But why do we lose the King of Jordan?
Because of refugees. He's told me I can't, well, one reason we're going to lose him, he's told me and Senator McCain, I've got 600,000 Syrian refugees, 40,000 new Syrian kids in Jordanian schools, and he's hanging on by a thread. If he has another 400 or 500,000, he's gone.
But to that, you're making the regional argument that
Right.
you and others, I've heard this also tonight, that they were concerned that the president didn't make. But, you know, it wasn't that long ago. It seems like 6 lifetimes ago. It wasn't that long ago that you were standing on the president's driveway, frankly, trashing him and saying that he should have been out there talking about this on a more broad level with regard to dealing
I'll
with Syria.
continue to trash him in that regard.
I'm sure you're going to be invited for dinner.
Well,
in
no,
a
no,
couple
I like the
minutes,
president, actually.
No, but you were, in all seriousness, you were trying to extract leverage out of him with this particular situation by getting him to do even more, arm the rebels. And is that now completely off the table?
President's
Can we narrow
in a
now
bind.
on chemical weapons?
No, people don't want to get involved in the Mideast any more than they have to. But tomorrow is the anniversary of 9/11. Could you imagine 12 years ago, the night before the 12th anniversary, we would be talking about what should we do if there's a chemical weapons attack by Assad? What should be the response?
You're saying 12 years ago, it would have been a no-brainer, we go in.
I'm saying that we're losing the lessons of 9/11, that Iraq is a lot to be learned from Iraq.
But
it can't overshadow the lessons of 9/11, and they're pretty simple to me. Safe havens for al-Qaeda are forming in Syria. They're beginning to form again in western Iraq. And Iran, the biggest prize of all is to stop their nuclear ambitions. And the way we're handling this is making it more likely the Iranians will get a nuclear weapon and al-Qaeda will have more safe havens.
But let's talk about al-Qaeda because, you know, one of the cons argument that the president actually laid out is that the rebels, you could, if you had armed the rebels, as some of you had wanted, or the rebels end up triumphing as a result of some kind of intervention that you're handing over authority to bad guys.
Well, I thought the president did a pretty good job of knocking that down. The one thing I can tell everybody at this table and anybody still listening to this debate is that there are 35 million Syrians. The likelihood that they're fighting to get rid of Assad to be ruled by al-Qaeda is 0. Are there al-Qaeda members filling in the vacuum? Yeah, most of them are coming from Iraq. There's indigenous problems and they're foreign fighters. I have no concern whatsoever that al-Qaeda will win by force of arms at the ballot box in Syria. Are the rebels mixed? Are they radicals within the rebels? Will it be a confusing mess the day after Assad falls? Yes, but to say that our nation shouldn't help the opposition because al-Qaeda is present in Syria will lead to an al-Qaeda-run nation is, to me, just not plausible. And I thought the president did a pretty good job talking about that.
Have you convinced members of your own party?
Well, when I hear a member of my party say, we'll be the Air Force for al-Qaeda, I say, have you ever actually been to the region? Have you sat down and talked with any? Well, if Ted said that, I'm talking about Ted Cruz. The idea that Syria is going to wind up under al-Qaeda control is not plausible. The idea there will be a bloodbath after Assad falls is realistic. The longer it goes, the worse it gets. But this is not about replacing Assad with al-Qaeda from our point of view.